Have you caught yourself saying, "Oh, I can't wait till these kids go back to school. I just need to get back on track." Yet you just keep pushing it off and pushing it off until you are hoping that there comes a day or time when it just naturally becomes easier to quote unquote get back on track. Maybe you've been snacking more, skipping meals, grabbing whatever's easy between sports, camps, travel, just whatever it is. And now you feel pretty tired, bloated, and just really overall disconnected from your body. And if you're in this middle of maybe what can feel like a chaotic summer spiral, you're not alone. And this episode is going to be a gentle push in the right direction without any guilt, without any shame, and definitely without extreme rules. So stay tuned for this episode. Hey guys, welcome to this week's episode. I'm so excited that you're here. If you are just like me, I literally just rolled in from a camping trip, which was super fun. We go every year with friends, and so it's kind of an offhand parenting experience because I just roll in with all the stuff. I pack the stuff, I pack the food, we do all that, and then I just let the children go and like come back with if you're bleeding or something has terribly gone wrong. Otherwise, I'll see you at bedtime is pretty much how it rolls. I'm also with my friends, so it is very fun. The kids have a blast, but we're outside, most of the time. So there's lots of sun exposure. There's eating, which is usually more comfort type of eating, not generally food that I'm making at home. Although I try my best to do what I can with what we have. It's just going to be less structure, and that if you're feeling how I'm feeling today, we're going to talk about what we can do while we're still in the middle of summer or towards the end of the summer. This episode is coming out early August. And so we are in South Dakota getting ready for back to school, but there's also other areas of the country where they don't probably go back. You don't go back to school for another 4 weeks. Or we have other areas of the country where you're getting ready, or maybe you already are back in school. So we're just kind of in the midst of trying to find our footing again. And if you're not quite into sending those kids back to school yet, what can you do right now to get your feet back on the ground? Because we rely on the school schedule, especially as moms, very heavily on our basically regulation of our schedule, of our bodies, of our children's schedule, and thus ends up to be our schedule. And so the school schedule seems to always be like the center of how we decide to take action or whatever it is. But I want you to know that you don't have to wait until school is back in session. You don't have to wait for a certain, if you're listening to this in December, like you don't have to wait till Christmas is over. If you're listening to this in, I don't know, March, you don't have to wait until the next XYZ opportunity to make just simply your next best decision and find ways to get your 2 feet on the ground, to feel grounded, to feel certain, and, taking the right actions that you want to take so that you feel good in your body. At this time of year, we're just experiencing a lot of inconsistent meals. So it's very normal to eat later on in the day. And when we eat later on in the day, we tend to not wake up as hungry. And so then we postpone breakfast and we eat a later breakfast, and we just like keep exasperating the schedule. And what ends up happening is that this is also going to impact our sleep, because when we eat larger meals closer to our bedtime, this doesn't allow our body to fall into a deep sleep. Our melatonin doesn't get as high as it could, and our cortisol is higher than what we want it to be at bedtime. And so we kind of get into this rut as well, which will play into our energy throughout the day. And then also when we're delaying that breakfast, we're usually delaying it until we feel very hungry, because many times our day starts to take over. We'll have some coffee and we'll just kind of ride it out until we get really hungry and it becomes apparent that we must eat. And then that feels kind of like an out of control experience because you're like, I got to eat now. And then we end up choosing foods that maybe are not great for our blood sugar. And then when we start out the day by eating or drinking a coffee and then eating meals that are not stable for our blood sugar, we're going to continue that throughout the rest of the day. And we're just going to be riding this blood sugar roller coaster where our blood sugar goes high. And if it goes high, it must come down. When it comes down, that feels very emergent to your body. And so it will release cortisol when your blood sugar comes crashing down. And then cortisol goes out and it finds sugar sources that are stored inside of your body and brings those out. So then your blood sugar goes back up. And then you'll become hungry, you'll do it over again, and we just keep repeating this cycle. And then, so we have that going on. So inconsistent meals, blood sugar instability, less structure, probably more social obligations, and alcohol consumption in the summer. When we are more social, we tend to partake in more alcohol consumption. And so that also plays over into your bloating, into your blood sugar stability the next day, your energy, how you've slept. It plays into so many things. And especially for women in midlife, this isn't just like a 24-hour thing like it was when we were in our 20s. We know alcohol does not impact us the way that it used to. It just takes a lot longer to recover. So what might end up to be an evening of a few drinks ends up to be a few days where you just don't quite feel like yourself yet. And so just notice, how is alcohol impacting you? I always think it's a good idea to look at your alcohol consumption and to ask yourself, is this how I want to live my life with this amount of alcohol consumption? Do I love my alcohol consumption? Do I love my relationship with alcohol? If any of that is a no, then you really want to look at, what does that look like if I did love my relationship with alcohol and if I loved how much I was consuming? You have that answer. The truth is, like, there's no right or wrong answer on how much is okay to consume or not consume, because if we're going to look at that, the evidence shows that it's really probably not safe to consume any. But many of us just don't want to live a life where we never drink alcohol. So then you want to pause and ask yourself, well, what would it look like for me to have a relationship with alcohol I love? And how much does that look like? Or when do I decide to have drinks? And when do I know that this many drinks is an absolute, maybe like max that I will have? So having that conversation with yourself is really important, so that you don't end up feeling guilty or remorseful after you have a few drinks. Because if you're noticing that you're feeling guilty, shameful, remorseful after drinking, it's because what you're drinking is not coinciding with how you want to feel with your alcohol consumption. It just means that there's something internal going on with you and your identity with your alcohol consumption. And you want to clarify that. Just FYI, this is something that I coach with my clients in Mindfully Well, because Mindfully Well is not a diet. It's a way to help you develop how you want to live your life in the healthiest body that you can have. And so this comes with, like I just talked about, with alcohol consumption. Like, what does that actually look like for you in being the healthiest person in the healthiest body that you want? Also with food, also with boundaries, also with stress and saying yes and no and all of those kinds of things as well. So the truth is that you have the answers to these questions that I'm giving you. And I really encourage you after this episode to sit down, and you can do journaling with this. You can do meditation. You can do anything that will help you kind of go internal and ask yourself, what does this actually look like for me? How do I want to live my life with what I just talked about was alcohol? But with you can use this with anything, right? You can use it for chocolate. You can use it for, whatever the, like, maybe the nemesis is that you've maybe had lately. And then also with this is that I tend to see less maybe purposeful workouts. Now, I tend to think about workouts like, I love any sort of body movement that feels good for you. We do tend to move our bodies more in the summer because we're on the go, we're doing things, we're probably outside walking more, getting more steps in and that kind of thing. But if we look at, if we're eating inconsistently, our blood sugar is not stable, we're not sleeping well at night, and maybe bringing in some more alcohol, it is probably very likely that your purposeful, like structured workouts, like when you lift your weights and you do a strength workout, that is kind of being maybe pushed to the wayside, and you're maybe prioritizing other things. Now, Life will never be fully balanced. You will never have the exact amount of everything that you want to have. That's part of life. But that being said, are you pushing more workouts to the wayside than what you really want to be? Is there a way that you can bring a little bit more structure in to maybe your work week so you're able to get these structured workouts in? I personally have had to make some adjustments in my schedule. I started out this summer by just going to the gym, just being like, I'm just going to figure it out. I'm going to go to the gym. And so some days I would drag my youngest kid there and he would not want to go, or he does do workouts at a local gym. So I'll go with him sometimes and then I'll do my workout while he's doing his workout. But as some other sports have kind of taken center for him throughout the summer, those gym opportunities have kind of started to dwindle down because he's putting more focused time into football coming up. So we just have less time of going to the gym. And I don't really sometimes think it's worth the argument. Sometimes I have to have with him in the morning for him to just come along with me to the gym. So I'm like, what am I going to do? I can leave him alone for a short amount of time. He's old enough to be at home for maybe an hour or two, but generally not more than that. However, he's not like, it depends on his mood. Sometimes he's very interested in being at home alone and sometimes he's not. And so I just got kind of tired of trying to like hope for the best every morning. So what I did is I found I'm doing my workouts at home. I went out and bought I've always had free weights for my gym downstairs. But I just didn't have enough of the right kinds of weights and it just always felt kind of clunky. My workout bench broke. And so I just started to go back to the gym. This was like last year. And I loved it, but right now it just feels like more work than what I'm willing to do. So, not in the workout sense. The other part of this too is I do think it is very important to switch up your types of workouts. I have been going to the gym, lifting very heavy for a good year. Yeah, a year, doing gym types of workouts with, machines, barbells, heavy weights, that kind of thing. And I have not been doing really any conditioning of my own, or any like functional movements, right? So I've been doing a lot of like lifting of like chest presses, doing squats. And so it's a lot of moving my body in the same plane over and over again. And so I thought, well, this could be good because I will do some workouts at home, which will require me to lift lighter weights. But then I am working my body conditionally a little bit harder and functionally a little bit harder. So that means I'm doing more like burpees. I am maybe doing more, I'm just trying to think of a few examples, like renegade rows. So I'm putting my body in a prone condition and I'm moving my body in different planes, doing those kinds of things. So that being said, I have noticed that actually the actual like fluidity of the movement of my body has improved since I have brought some of my workouts at home and have started to work out that way. So long story short, didn't plan on talking about that today, but that being said, pivot when you need to pivot. I got some new dumbbells. Now I'm just working down in my basement until that doesn't work anymore, or I get bored of that and then I'll go back to the gym. But it also was a way for me to get interested in a new workout program as well. I was starting to get kind of burned out of doing, the same kinds of motions. I would always switch up my workouts, my reps and my sets and all of that. But, I always think it's a good idea to kind of change your environment, change who you're listening to for your workouts, and also all areas of health, change who you're listening to because it's always not one thing. It's not one perspective. It's so many different perspectives in your ear that help you develop your own personal identity of health. And I think that's really important for your movement, for your nutrition, for your mental health, for your spiritual health, all of that, right? It's not one thing. It's so many things. So that being said, pushing weight workouts to the wayside, so having some less movement. And so what this feels like in your body is that we feel some bloating, we feel some fatigue, we maybe feel more brain fog, we're maybe stress eating or emotionally eating, or we could be eating out of boredom. Sometimes I think like this time of year, so like me personally, I'll speak from my personal experience, is like it's go, 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 go. And then as soon as I feel like I have like some time to breathe or just be at home and I have open space, it's almost like I have to reorientate myself to being at home without having a whole bunch of stuff to do outside of my home to take care of, and not let myself feel bored of that. Or here's a better way to say it, actually allow myself to feel bored just being at home, not having a tournament to go to, not having a travel, that I can just be here. And personally, I'm a huge homebody. I love being at home. But when you've kind of been pulled in many directions for a couple of months now, and then you're just kind of like left to be, it's like, okay, well, what should I be doing? I feel like I'm forgetting something. Or then I'm in my pantry and I'm like, well, maybe I'm hungry. And it's like, I'm not hungry. I just don't know what to do with myself right now. And that's okay. Just FYI, too, someone who works with the nervous system, works with the stress response. This is a very classic case of me escaping my dysregulated nervous system and coping with food in a way to make myself feel better in the moment. But that's not a way that I actually want to cope. I would rather find different ways to cope rather than using food as an unnecessary way to distract myself from my own body and from my own thoughts. So just remember that if you're feeling these things this summer, that your body isn't feeling, you're not feeling, this is so normal, but you're just off of rhythm. And there's so many things, like little things that you can do that can start to bring you back into a little bit of rhythm and regulation without doing a whole reset, without doing a whole overhaul, without having to start over on a Monday. Because if you're listening to this when this comes out, it's a Tuesday. And you know what? You can start over on a Tuesday. You can make the next best decision at Tuesday at 4 p.m. You can do it on Wednesday at 9 a.m. Like you don't have to have a Monday. You don't have to have the first of a month. You don't have to have the fresh start of a season. You don't have to have any of that. You can just simply make your next best decision. And when we do that, when we try to say, I'm going to wait till Monday or the first of the month or the first Monday after the kids go back to school, that's when I'm going to get back on track. This is really just you anchoring in on perfectionism and saying it must be this certain way in order for me to achieve a result. And this comes from you trying to control not only yourself, but an environment and your body. And you don't need those exact start dates, times. You just need to make your next best decision. So pay attention to where you're anchoring in on this has to be perfect. I need to have an exact plan. I need to go all the way in and to be completely paleo. I need to go all the way in and do a whole 30 to reset. I need to omit sugar for 30 days to reset. Insert whatever it is. It all sounds familiar, right? No, you don't have to do those things. You can just make your next best decision. It's usually just a few tweaks here and there that gets you feeling a lot better in your skin. You don't have to wait until a certain day or time to do that. So I'm going to offer you a couple of things that you can start with today that will help bring some regulation and some balance back into your life and into your body so that you don't have to wait for the next season to do that. First of all, I want you to focus on blood sugar stability. Blood sugar stability is the key to getting you feel like a energized human inside of your body. This is also how you initially balance your hormones, right? We can't go in and we can't like micromanage our estrogen and our progesterone and our testosterone because those guys actually respond initially to your insulin, which is the hormone that responds to your blood sugar fluctuations, and to your cortisol, which is the hormone that responds to your stressors and to your insulin. So know that blood sugar stability is really the root cause. It's the one area we want to go to that we have so much control over that helps us feel like really good in our body, feels like a balanced woman. Especially in midlife, this is a very important thing that you need to focus on. So how do we make sure that our meals are stable? for our blood sugar, we want to make sure that we have protein. Protein would be any animal-based protein. So when I say protein, I'm talking chicken, fish, turkey, beef, bison, salmon, whatever, insert whatever protein you want to have. Ideally, you want to have somewhere around the size of your own palm, because the palm is I'm just looking at my hands right now and they're all full of dirt. Your palm is the size of your body is the size of your palm. Like, it's going to match, right? I'm not going to have an enormous palm compared to the size of my body. And generally, if like you're thinking about a lean source of protein, so if I'm thinking about like a chicken breast and it's the size of my palm, I'm going to get a good 25, 30 grams of protein there. Now, keep in mind, you also want to think about like the thickness of the protein too. So generally you want to have at least, I think they say about like a deck of cards. Honestly, just to orientate yourself to what this actually looks like for you, it's not a bad idea to weigh the chicken breast and then to put it in MyFitnessPal and see what does this give me for protein. There's nothing wrong with finding out information and data. Now, I could do a whole nother episode on how we don't drive into perfectionism with this, and that's a whole nother conversation with another day. But you can look at that information that gives you some orientation to go back on to be like, oh, okay, this is about what I would need for a meal. So animal-based protein. Then we want fiber. Fiber, typically, I just like to make it easy peasy, and this is going to be your vegetables, something green on your plate. Actually, not all vegetables are green. It doesn't have to be green, but that's about what I'm going to tell you. Fiber can also come from different sources like chia seeds and flax seeds and nuts and seeds as well. We just want to remember that those are also going to add in some fats. That doesn't mean that they're bad, but we don't want to sit around and eat like, a cup of chia seeds a day, because that's going to end up to be a whole slew of issues for you. So, right, like, let's just think about easy ways to get fiber in. That would be vegetables. So when we're talking about vegetables, how much should you have? Ideally, like when you ball your hand up into a fist, this is about a cup of raw veggies. And so if you can have 1 to 2 of these per meal, that's going to aid in blood sugar stability. And then finally, we want to think about fats. Fats also help slowly absorb that carbohydrate or that glucose from the meal you're eating into your bloodstream. And that's the goal. We still want to have glucose. We still want to have carbohydrates in our meal because our body loves those. But we want to do it in a slow, sustainable way instead of a quick absorption where our blood sugar then goes really high and then it comes crashing down low. So fat will help kind of buffer the absorption of the carbohydrate. So in terms of how much fat, you can use about the size of your thumb, or about a tablespoon if you're measuring like peanut butter or some sort of nut butter, an olive oil or an avocado oil, something like that. About the size of your thumb is what I would think about for like some almonds or whole nuts, something like that too. Okay. So we've got protein, we've got fat, and we've got fiber. Those are our 3 buffers that we will have in addition to a carbohydrate. So carbohydrates will be anything. And when we're talking about these carbohydrates, these are your starchy carbohydrates. They're the carbohydrates that will raise your blood sugar. We just want to have these with our protein, fat, and fiber because our protein, fat, and fiber are our buffers. So they slowly absorb that carbohydrate. So we still get the energy from that carbohydrate. Our body still gets everything it wants from that, lots of nutrients, fiber, sugar, all of that. We want to have that, but we just want it to be slowly absorbed. And so our protein, fat, and fiber are going to be our buffers for that. And that is just how you create blood sugar stability. It's really that easy. And starchy carbohydrates, I didn't tell you what those were. So this is going to be your fruits. This is going to be like your pastas, anything that's like a wheat or a grain, oats, corn, quinoa, rice, potatoes. Those are generally what we will see: breads, muffins, pastas, those kinds of things. Those are all going to raise your blood sugar, but it won't be a blood sugar spike if you have your buffers in there with it. So breakfast, lunch, dinner, you're always having meals that are completely balanced with all of these. Now, the other thing is that you want to listen to your hunger and your fullness to see, do I need to have a snack? I love snacks. Personally, I'm a big snack fan. I usually have at least one a day, depending on how close my meals are together. And so, but I only snack if I'm actually hungry. I'm not snacking because I think I should snack. I'm not snacking because I'm bored. I'm not snacking because I am emotionally regulating. I'm just snacking during the day if I'm actually physically hungry. And I typically know when I'm going to be hungry. So if I have an early breakfast because of my workout schedule, then my post workout meal would technically probably be my snack. And then in the afternoon, I likely don't need a snack because I'm having a later lunch. Generally, because during the week, I don't usually eat lunch until after 1, just because of how my call schedules go. And so then, and we are usually early to eat dinner. And so from 1 to like 5 in the summer, we eat pretty early. Then I don't really need a snack, right? So snacking is just if you have hunger cues for that. So blood sugar stability is the first thing I want you to focus on in your meals, especially for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. The second thing I want you to look at is, when are you going to sleep and when are you putting your body in bed? So sometimes we're putting our body in bed at a good time to get enough sleep, but we're doing things that don't help us sleep. So we're scrolling on social media, we're watching some shows, we're making 12,000 lists, like insert whatever it is that you're doing when you should be sleeping. So shut off those distractions. No more scrolling an hour before bed. And try to give yourself a nice, peaceful, quiet environment inside of your bedroom, so that once you put your body in bed, your body's like, oh, we go to sleep now. Okay. Instead of putting your body in bed and your body's like, hey, now what are we going to do? How are you going to entertain me now? How are we going to distract ourselves from trying to sleep? Many times when somebody comes to me and they can't sleep, it's not that we need to overhaul. We don't need to add 10,000 supplements in. We need to look at your meal timing. So making sure you're eating dinner early enough and you're not snacking before bed, and then stop with the distractions when you should be sleeping. And this is just a kind of like a tough love thing you have to do for yourself, is to be like, I'm going to bed, and that's just it, right? I'm not going to keep finding ways to distract myself from sleeping. And one thing I'll say about that is that I know that many times when you actually get to go to bed, you've been doing things all day long for other people. You've been working, you've been taking care of your kids, you've been cleaning your house, doing all that stuff, and you finally like have time to yourself. So this is when you do something that is distracting. But just ask yourself, is the time of distraction that you're giving yourself in the evening, is it really worth your fatigue for the next day? Is it really worth the exchange that you could have for energy? And most of the time when I ask clients that, they're like, oh, no, I guess it's not. Like, I do really like having time to do whatever I want in the evenings, but it's not necessarily a good exchange for not having energy the next day. And also, FYI, if you've got energy the next day, you're likely going to find pockets of time where you get to have time to yourself, where you can actually carve that time out, instead of, dragging in fatigue all day, and now everything just takes you longer and everything just feels terrible while you do it as well. And the last thing I'm going to tell you to do would be to, going back to what I said in the beginning, is to look at your alcohol consumption in the summertime. And does this match your identity of you being the healthiest woman in a body that is the healthiest version of you, right? Is this the best version of you, basically, is what I'm trying to say. And if it's not the best version of you, what does the best version of you actually look like? Now, it's really easy to swing all the way to the other side and say, the best version of me never drinks. Well, is that true? Do you really want to say no to a drink with your girlfriends? Do you really want to say no to a glass of wine on date night? And if the answer is, I actually do want to have those drinks, then that's good. That's a starting out point for you. There are certain days, times, and points where you do want to have some alcohol consumption. But is it how you've been behaving in the past couple of months? If not, then start to look at how do I want to act when it comes to alcohol? When do I want to say yes? When do I want to say no? Which alcohol agrees with me as well, because we all know there's some alcohol that you do fine with, and there's other alcohol that you question what happened when after you drink it. And you're like, oh, I thought I would have a couple, and then pretty soon I had 5 or 6. And sometimes it's that type of alcohol that will trigger that in you. So reflecting on your consumption, do you love your consumption? Do you love your relationship with the consumption of alcohol you've had? And if not, just make a few tweaks to be able to reflect what does the best version of me and the healthiest body that I can have, what does she do when it comes to alcohol consumption? You can ask yourself that for all the things we've talked about today, right? What does she do when it comes to grocery shopping, when it comes to meal prepping? What does she do when it comes to lunch on a Friday? What does she do when it's with her workout schedule during the week? What does she do when it's 7 p.m., right? And so this is actually something I'm working on inside of Mindfully Well. So I am actually restructuring Mindfully Well. So more on that to come very soon. But part of the restructure is actually getting very individualized and letting you take the driver's seat on what does it look like for you to feel XYZ in your body. And XYZ is the goal feeling that you want to have. It's not a weight number. It's not a jean size. It's not something that's external outside of us. It's something that's always been internal for you. And we want to get close to that because that's the answer that you have been looking for so long. And so it's not saying I want to lose X amount of pounds. It's not saying I want to omit this kind of food. It's not saying I want to completely go all in over here on this thing. It's actually going inside to your body of who you are and asking yourself, what do I really want? How do I really want to feel? And how do I bring that feeling into myself every single day? So I'm so excited to share more about that coming up soon, but unfortunately not today because we're going to call the episode today. So I will see you all next week for another episode. Have a fantastic rest of your day. Bye-bye.